Border protection is top of mind on a couple of fronts after less than 1 week of Labor in power. Let's start with the Biloela family, who've been the centre of a long legal and activist campaign to win settlement in Australia. This family originated in Sri Lanka and is actually the Murugappan family, Biloela being the Queensland town that embraced them. In opposition, Labor promised to allow them to remain in Australia and return to Biloela. And this afternoon, the acting Home Affairs Minister, Jim Chalmers, issued a statement saying he had exercised his power under the Migration Act. The effect of my intervention enables the family to return to Biloela, the statement reads, where they can reside lawfully in the community on bridging visas while they work towards the resolution of their immigration status in accordance with Australian law. So there you go. The family is not home and hosed, but they can go back to the town they had made home in Australia. There's been no media conference on this today, but here's what Jim Chalmers said 2 days ago.
And obviously there are a series of steps that I would need to appropriately take in order to give effect to our long-held view that family must get home to Biloela, to the warm embrace of one of the most wonderful Queensland towns.
Now, this saga began 10 years ago when the father, Nadez, arrived on a people smuggling boat. Priya came on another people smuggling boat the following year. They met in Sydney, married and settled on bridging visas in Biloela while they pressed their claims for refugee status based on the Sri Lankan civil war, now over, of course. They married and had 2 daughters, but were unsuccessful in their refugee claims. And despite being well established in the Biloela community, they've been in detention now for 4 years in Melbourne, on Christmas Island, and in the community in Perth. The people of Biloela have lobbied hard for the family, as have activists and Labor politicians. So the change of government last weekend was fundamental. Now, the decision to let them stay will be widely welcomed, I'm sure. Labor is going to win a lot of accolades for their compassion, although legal processes are still to play out. And let's be clear, nobody surely would begrudge this family a happy and safe future in Australia. But the problems here are very clear, and there's 2 of them. First, justice. If they are not refugees, then they cannot be allowed to game the system, because millions of others around the world would happily do exactly the same if they had the opportunity. And secondly, there's the crucial matter of the signal this sends. By granting settlement in such a public way to non-refugees who have arrived here on people smugglers' boats, it sends the wrong signal to people smugglers and their potential customers at precisely the wrong time, at a change of government. Now, coupled with Labor's promise to scrap temporary protection visas, just like they did back in 2008, then the worry is that a loud and clear message has been spread that Australia's borders just got easier to penetrate. Listen to the new Prime Minister this morning.
Jim Chalmers, who is the interim Home Affairs Minister, will be making a statement today, and it will be consistent with my view that you can have strong borders without being weak on humanity.
Strong borders without being weak on humanity. Strong borders, but with compassion. That's exactly what Labor pretended it could do last time. Be compassionate, but still be strong. It cost hundreds of lives and saw 50,000 people churned through the trauma of detention for many, many years. If the people smuggling boats start again, if we see boats arrive, people go into detention, and hundreds of people drown, if we see all of that all over again, then compassion shown today will pale into insignificance compared to the trauma unleashed again across our maritime borders. And just on that, there's been another development concerning the controversial reporting of that boat from Sri Lanka being turned back on election day, last Saturday, when we all went to the polls. It was highly unusual to hear about that from government authorities, and undoubtedly the Liberals sought to make political hay out of it at the last moment with text messages and other warnings about the risk of Labor on borders. Now, the ABC has reported today that it was the Prime Minister's office that directed Operation Sovereign Borders to announce that boat interception. And Labor today was highly critical.
And the reports today are that happened at the direction of the Prime Minister's office. This really is the desperate acts of a dying government. It's an absolute disgrace.
Well, just perhaps the government should have consulted Labor on the day, given the caretaker conventions, the fact that we're all going to the election that day. Perhaps the decision to announce or not announce could have been a joint call. But given the history of this, the government was on a hiding to nothing, because if they hadn't made this public, no doubt they would have been accused later of hiding the reality on election day. And besides, as soon as he was sworn in as acting Prime Minister, Miles himself was out there telling everybody via Sky News as much as he could about that boat and claiming credit for sending the Sri Lankans home.
They have been returned to Sri Lanka, and that has happened in a very ordinary and routine way. I think it's important to say up front that what this shows is that there is absolutely no change in terms of Australia's border settings under this government.
Yeah, here's Labor thumping their chests about sending people back to Sri Lanka early in the week, but claiming credit for letting a Sri Lankan family stay today. Let's hope Labor knows what it's doing on borders. It's never got border protection right before. We don't know who the minister will be in this area, and lives will be destroyed and lost if they mess it all up again.